Alright, the event, 11,500 years ago. The Adam and Eve story of the history of Cataclysms by Chan Thomas. The event, 11,500 years ago. Did you ever sit down, even at the card table, or with a 1,000 pieces of the puzzle, but by yourself at the table for hours and hours to put it together, doesn't it, with the trial and error and patience of the playing with the parts? We're still trying to, or some of the yet unfitted to be for the worldwide puzzle that have been, and if the table is for the 1949. However, even though it's still not complete, show the graphic representation of the Earth picture, but at least it was 11,500 years ago. Look at the globe of the world, pick out the longitude of the 90 degrees with the latitude of the 60 degree of the north, and this longitude 90 degrees west and latitude of the 60 degrees north. This point with the western part of the Hudson Bay. Now hold the globe at the spot with the 90 degrees west of the 60 degrees north of the North Pole on the axis rotation. This is for the configuration of the world between 18,500 years ago and 11,500 years ago with the North Pole, with the ice cap formed of the Lurian Basin in Canada. The continents, however, were not quite the same, and there was the huge continent of the Atlantic Ocean strip of the England area, the cross Atlantic of the Bahamas, Caribbean Sea, possibly even the Gulf of Mexico did not exhibit the evidence of the Caribbean being land at the time. The ice cap on with the globe, the opposite of the side of the Hudson Bay, covered the western Australia, the eastern Australia with the burgeoning with the humans, animals, birds, and vegetation and rivers. There was another continent with the Pacific covering with the ringed in Hawaiian island with the Galapagos, the Easter Islands with the Tahiti, the Solomons, and the Carolina Islands. However, the notice of the heavy sedimentary stratification making up the top of the half of the dead Diamond Head, they have the same character of the tribe that exposed the walls of the Grand Canyon Momentum Valley with the mystery of the Canyon de Chelly. The province of the Celion held the major civilization Indian Ohio of the northern India that was thriving with the capital of the country. It was called Aegea. Greece land the Hellenians were the home of the tall, the blue eye of the blonde race, the same signs of the law unmatched to this day. The Amazon basin was an inland sea with a legend called the series of the Xarius. Mouth of the Amazon River then was wide and seagoing connection between the Atlantic and Sea of Xarius. The western coast of South Africa was not mountains, indications of prehistoric with the Tahitian Bolivia, known as 12,500 feet above sea level, was at sea level. It was a metropolis, a seaport with a canal system of the seagoing ship with the largest ship of the day of traverse from the Pacific and the inland sea. If you wish to read the details about the read of the calendar of the Tiahushino, the great idol of Tiahushino, both the Hannes and Schindler with the Belgium and Peter Allen, that make terrific reading. Astronomers with the Telesium with the telescope of the hour today there have been a huge satellite orbiting the Earth west to east for 449 times per year, which they used the time standard orbit was so accurate. Now a suburb of Lucknow was for the capital of India with the greater navigation with the greater science with the greater explorer with the eastern hemisphere with the dark eye with the dark hair man for the India had gravity propelled vehicles and gravity made weaponry. About 11,500 years ago, in 9,550 BC, with the day of the astronomer of the Potsdam Observatory, writing of the ruins of the Tahiti on the 60-mile thick shell of the Earth, and shifted the position one more of the 1/4 to 1/2 day at about 7,000 years after the previous shift. North Pole moved southward, and the Sudan Basin of Africa shifted to the North Pole. This was the time of the Ptolemaic states, for that when steadying of the Pleiades below the horizon occurred, and the Holy Land was moved in the region of the terrible cold for the many generations, actually 4,000, 5,000 years until the Noah's flood 7,000 years ago. The equatorial pivoted points over the coast of the mid-Chile and the mid-China near Yangatse in northern Vietnam. The greater continent specifically disappeared with the almost complete with the new unknown eastern island that's on the edge of the continent with the drop of the remain of the Pacific Ocean floor for about 5,000 years to be heaved up in a catalysm of the causing the Noah's flood with the remain of the vast Pacific continent. It rolled with the South Pole. Discover the millennium that exploded with the last remaining of the motherland over the frozen reservoir above the bottom of the earth for millions of the square miles in the area. Today we see indications of the continent sedimented shroud of the heights of the Diamond Head of the Hawaiians and some of the stratification over the higher Pacific Island. One of the great continent of the Atlantic of the only large island that was left on the west of the wild ocean between the here and there and Galabar was so shallow and muddy but impossible to ship. The threat of clue with the constraint of the great knowledge of the time to come out with the Captain Cook discovered the Polynesian warrior tribe of the New Zealand in the 1700s. They told ancient legend of the Saturn rings they had heard over the telescope. Now that you travel those rings with the naked eye, and now you try to see these rings with your naked eye, and you'll find out that it's impossible. The evidence at Tehran show that their great civilization wiped out suddenly with the people who caught up in the middle of the normal day with the activities catastrophic indignation for the evidence show that the fabulous city suffered the unfair of the Easter Island, although the Rockies and Andes would start with the Cataclysm and the Tuhan with the Bear, with the Pacific to remain in the almost 5,000 years and behave at the present altitude of 12,500 feet, the last Cataclysm of the 7,000 years ago. So Cataclysm 11,500 years ago, so the Hudson Bay with the opposite area southwest of the Australia, the both the roll of the equator of the opposite side of the Earth, and Sudan Basin roll of the North Pole. Remain there for the next 4,500 to 5,000 years, while the shift occurring with the taking a quarter, 1/2 day of the complete itself. The Earth's ocean atmosphere through angular momentum kept rotating in the normal direction during the most of the shift of the occasion. Ocean violently indulting in the most of the lands of the Earth of the supersonic speed of the atmosphere of the bringing with the unimaginable hurricane, supersonic wind, velocity of the whole continent of the subject with the tremendous upheaval of the earthquake, the huge mountain range was created with a 60 miles thick molten layer between the 60-mile thick shell of the Earth of the broke of the shell plate for all the world thereafter by earth and fire with a pitfall feel. Well, who survived the pitfall food of the whole Earth of both estimates of less than 1% of all the life on Earth. The ocean wind took 6 days after the start of the Cataclysm, the result of the holistic wars over the surface of the Earth. Over the 7th day, when it began to settle down about 5,000 years of the normal activity and compliance, 2-mile thick ice caps over the Laurentine Basin of the Indian Ocean have been shifted from the polar home, started with a new course of the revolving equilaterally proceeded to melt with a tremendous speed with the torrent of the carping the great groves and the mountains of the rushing, gushing, swirling water over the ice, overwhelmed with everything in the path of the grave, the amount of the moisture that being poured into the atmosphere were shrouded by the torrid zone with the dark of the fog. With many of the years during the several generation, the ocean rose some 200, 300 feet over all the world, and some of the melting of the ice caps due after the Cataclysm, the end of the Laurentian Ice Age and the start of the Old Stone Age was complete. The Mayan tongue lived down in the scattered remnants of the Polynesian tongue, with the great Utah, Egyptian, Eskimo tongue, with the nomadic, Oriental, German, American, Indian, just about all the language of the resurrection from the war of the Tao lived on many shores of the Pacific. Of the man who survived the end later became Tarahu, Tungara, Torah, and depends on the whole tribe of the legend you find. Adam and Eve could have sprung from the same story. Who knows? Genesis was 4,500. Genesis 4,500 million, 4,500,000,000 years ago. Read Genesis was 11,500 years ago. Both in Bible. A translation interpretation of the Genesis 1 and 3 with the ratio instruction that God must have been given in the chapters. We have the English retranslating direct with the God with the English bypassing Greek and Hebrew. Alright, the book of Genesis, chapter 1, 2, and 3.